Good evening. Thanks for having us here today. I'm Gabe Griess. This is my bride, Kristie. And we're going to give you a little bit of an intro on the story of our daughter, Mickie. And so I'll walk you through kind of where Mickie's been and our experience with her. And she has epilepsy. And then Kristie will give you some of her insights as a mama bear, warrior, who's gone through it all to just kind of share that side of it, because she certainly, I think, carried more than her fair share of it in it all, because I'm just sort of a yes sir, yes ma'am kind of person, and she had that instinct that says something's not right here. And these doctors, although they may be very educated, don't know my daughter, and so she interrupted that process, and we've got Mickie's Miracle, a great story about our little girl, and something that we like to share because good news in this arena is sometimes hard to come by. And it generally has a story of a strong, powerful parent behind them, where they have fought to save their little one. And when we're talking about quality of life. Normal is not the goal, right? With our little girl, she's got a chromosomal challenge. She can't ever be genetically normal. Just can't happen. But she's an amazing gift and has taught us so much, and we love her to death. So we'll show you some pictures, because those tell you a lot. But it was January 30th, 2012, at about 3 o'clock in the morning. Mickie was then just over 3 months old, and we kind of had this zombie-like routine of how you breastfeed and handle a baby at 3 in the morning. And Kristie had fed Mickie and laid her down on one of those pink little Graco blankets or whatever, and I pulled her across to me, and I picked her up, and her arms go straight out wide, and her eyes roll back in her head, and she is as hard as a board.
Oh my gosh.
And being an analyzer and a dad, I kind of hold her and I'm looking at her and like, Mickie, and it goes on for about 7-10 seconds. I'm like, I think this is a seizure. It goes on about 7 or 10 more seconds. I'm like, pretty sure this is a seizure. About another 7 or 10 seconds, and it breaks, and she kind of comes out of it. And we're like, think that was a seizure. We're not sure. Whatever. It was the first time we'd ever seen it. And of course, I'm supposed to take like a 7 a.m. flight out of San Francisco that morning to go to Arizona for military duty. So being the dutiful soldier and the fact we'd never seen this again, and we discussed it, I took off. And sure enough, on the whole way to the airport, there were like detours, and the interstate was shut down. And in retrospect, I was supposed to stay home, but I didn't do that, because we were in a new job and doing new stuff, and I thought my presence was needed. So fly to Arizona, and then over the next probably 12 hours, she ends up having 5 more seizures. And again, we'd never seen these. And so I turn around, I fly back, and I end up meeting Kristie at Children's Hospital of Oakland, where we did the vast majority of our early epilepsy care. And we're blessed, very blessed to have had those seizures, because her disease was called infantile spasms, which is a hypsarrhythmia of the brain, which is basically like static. So the only way I can describe it is, for those of you old enough to remember a car that had a rheostat radio when you could like turn the dial, sometimes you could tune it and you get like 2 stations, 2 different musics and static all at the same time. Well, that was like Mickie's brain trying to process the world. And so she was never going to have a chance, right? That static was going to interfere with language and emotions and just everything. And with her diagnosis, which we learned at Children's Hospital in Orange County, either the disease would kill her, the drugs would kill her, or she'd live in a vegetative state. Those were our choices if we couldn't stop the infantile spasms. And so we immediately started a drug called ACTH, which is this drug here. So she's probably like 4 months. It's maybe about a month after she started the first drug. And that required a shot in the thigh in the morning and the night. It's a steroid, and that's why she's blown up like a balloon. And it immediately stops the hypsarrhythmia. The problem is steroids will kill you. And so the idea is you put them on the steroids for a period of time, it kind of resets the brain, and then when you take them off ACTH, everything's good. So we had her on ACTH for about 6 weeks, I think, and we took her off, and then we had a month, and So now she's about 6 months old, and we'd gone back to Children's Hospital of Oakland, and we got to town a little bit early, so we had time to get a coffee. So we go to Pete's Coffee, and we're hopeful. We get a coffee, and we sit down in those brown leather chairs that every coffee house has, and sure enough, a seizure hits her. And the difference is that now in infantile spasms, the seizures are like this, and watch my face, eye movements, or a twitch. Those are seizures for infantile spasms, not the things you see in movies. And that's why I say back in time, the 5 truly classical seizures we had were a blessing, because we knew something was wrong. And so often with infantile spasms, it's diagnosed as colic, because the babies are grumpy and they're frustrated and all these things. So you don't find out that your child has this epilepsy until they're really missing milestones later in life at 12 and 18 and 24 months, when finally the doctor's like, oh yeah, I guess something is wrong, although the parents may have been saying it the whole time. So we were on ACTH, and then we came off ACTH and went into some other treatments, and then we decided to go on a longer treatment of ACTH, and then we're kind of at the end. We started a drug Sabril, and there were some other interims there and other processes, and we kind of got to where nothing was working and nothing was going to work. And they kind of lackadaisically came in and said, well, we could try brain surgery. And we're like, okay, and so then shortly thereafter, like that evening, Kristie was talking with a old friend through a college roommate, and we hear about a doctor in Orange County who is an amazing epileptologist. And so what I'd pause for a moment and say is, if you know anybody that has a child with epilepsy, they don't need to be with a pediatrician. They don't need to be with a neurologist. They need to be with an epileptologist. An epileptologist is a neurologist that specializes in epilepsy alone, not all the other neurological disorders. And so an epileptologist and a pediatric epileptologist, of which there are only about 20 in the United States, really works with children. So if you ever think about your cell phone, or you ever think about your computer that's ever had a virus or wasn't working correctly, how frustrated you were. Okay, well, your brain is the processor of your body, right? So if your processor, your brain isn't working correctly, your outlook on life is not real bright. You can find workarounds, but you don't want to be fighting that. And so we had to get this fixed for her. And so we went down to Orange County. And this is Dr. Zupan's down here at the bottom. She stands about this tall. She's German, marathon runner, weighs about 97 pounds, tough as nails, and has the bedside manner of an alligator. She just sits there and wags her finger at you and tells you all these terrible things about your child. The beautiful thing about it is And so Kristie's been a huge advocate, and we've probably got about a dozen families down there or so for treatment with Dr. Zupan's. And what we tell them is, right now you're fighting a ghost. Because until you have a diagnosis, you are fighting a ghost. You don't know what you're doing. And you may not like the diagnosis. It may be the most awful day of your life. But she will tell you what's wrong, and she will tell you what the prognoses are. She'll tell you the pathways you have. And she'll tell you what she thinks the best option is, and what the most likely option is, and the worst option is. But you'll be able to have information to be able to go out and fight for your child. And we didn't have that at that point. We had a diagnosis with infantile spasms. We didn't have a pathway forward. And so we went in for our first long-term monitoring. That's this picture here. You can see sort of the shock look on her face. Her brain's wrapped up. She's got electrodes all over it. She's on a tether that would stretch for about me to you, EJS. It's about how long her room was. And she was in there for almost a week the first time. It's 24 hours a day. The parent has to be with them the whole time. You get a little plunger. If you see anything, you mark the tape. And they run both the electronic imagery, and they look at the brain, and then they also have video. And so what they do is they correlate the video or the physical manifestation of the activity with the brain activity. And so they can really tell what kind of seizure it is and what part of the brain it originates from. And so one day they came in after the first long-term monitoring, and she says, hey, great news, your seizures have a focal point. And it's originating from the back left quadrant of the brain. And so that made us eligible for brain surgery. If your seizures aren't localized, they're more generalized. They originate from different parts of the brain, and there's no way to do surgery. And so we were relieved that we could go in for surgery, and
Which is a weird thing to be grateful for.
and this was basically all happened in the month of October. So we got down there early in October, and Mickie was born on the 26th of October. So this is kind of her 11th month of life that we're doing this. And so the day before her first birthday, we go in for surgery. And this is actually the suture cut of the second day, because she actually had 2 surgeries. So we took her the day before her first birthday. The next day we had cakes and cookies and stuff laying around that she didn't have the chance to enjoy. But we celebrated, and then the following morning, which would have been the 27th, her blood pressure was dropping, and just her vitals were off and whatnot. And there was a really well-trained nurse that said, "Hey, this isn't right." And they looked at her, and what had happened was they had disconnected the parietal occipital temporal lobe and left her hemisphere, which meant they just took the neurological connections out, but left the gray matter in there and the blood flow. So the brain was whole, it just wasn't communicating with that part. Well, what had happened was that had started swelling, and it was putting pressure on the brain and having it to deviate, which the brain doesn't like at all. The body doesn't like that at all. And so they immediately rushed her into another sprain surgery on that Sunday morning, at which point we were pretty much wiped out, and kind of gave it over and said, all right, take care of our little girl. And so we were lucky it was a Sunday, not a lot of surgeries, if any, scheduled. The doctor was, just kind of out enjoying the Southern California, so he was able to come back in, and they went in and they actually removed the gray matter and then stitched her back up, which is that picture you see there.
How much was it that they removed?
Say again?
Size-wise, how much they removed?
Well, it's about 25% of her brain. So,
whole parietal, occipital, and temporal lobe, and actually we just found out they left in
the temporal.
temporal lobe. So the parietal and occipital have been removed.
So
all of them
basically, your brain has 2 hemispheres, and you have your motor strip and your sensing strip, and so they disconnected everything from the sensing strip back. And the interesting piece is, as many of you may know from biology, that your eyes project on the back of your brain, or your occipital lobe. The interesting thing we found out was that your eyes actually focus from midline right, go to the left brain, midline left, go to the right brain. If you're confused, we can draw it out later, but it like crosses. And so when we took out the occipital lobe, Mickie's actually blind in the right half of both eyes. And so she can control her eyes independently, but if she's really looking at you, she'll throw this eye out. It's actually in her passport picture, which we just got, which is kind of cute.
I should put that up there.
Yeah. So anyhow, a crazy time, huge concern, but we took home a happy girl. And,
no seizures after.
And she hasn't had a seizure in 4 years, almost 4 years. So Dr. Z is the doctor we recommend people to. But we keep going back to LTMs or long-term monitorings. But we're going back about every 90 days. And that's kind of an interesting thing about where we were at the time. Is I was a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and if you know anybody in the military member can be designated as the NMA, or non-medical attendant. The non-medical attendant for the minor, right? So she can't take herself to the hospital. And so with me being designated as the non-medical attendant, then they put me on orders, and my job was to take her to the hospital. So I got travel money, and I got hotel, and I got food, and I got lodging, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's great. So an NMA, non-medical attendant, and it's a little challenging to work the system, but we were going down for a week at a time every 90 days. The bills would have been really, really rough. So.
Well, and it allowed us to stay in the hotel, and have that cared for, so that the Ronald McDonald House could be utilized for other families. It was really wonderful.
Yeah. So her second birthday, we sort of kind of came out of the haze. We'd had 2 or 3 good long-term monitors at that point, and Kristie threw a big, beautiful birthday party with lots of balloons and
Just a fundraiser
and stuff. We raised money for the hospital, and it was kind of the point where we're like, okay, we might be surviving this thing. and lots of friends came out. So then a couple more long-term monitoring. You can see now they're about 6 months apart. And then Mickie gets to go to school. So 2 years past surgery, almost to the day. It's crazy because in the interim, Kristie got pregnant again. And so this is the 27th of October in 14. On the 25th, Harrison was born. On the 26th, Birdie turned 3. On the 27th, I call her Birdie. Birdie got on the school bus.
Oh my gosh.
So Kristie's standing on the steps with her 2-day-old, watching her special needs child get on the bus and drive away. And the whole time the IEPs, I'm like, honey, we want the school bus. Yeah, but not like we want the school bus. And like a week into it, she's like, school bus, best decision ever, right? You get over the emotional thing when you're like, okay, I just bought back almost an hour of my life a day, not trying to drive to and from the school. I think there should always be school buses. I don't understand
Every
how,
child.
Yes.
I don't understand how in a environmentally friendly state, we think lining up 300 cars out in front of a school for half an hour is a smart thing every day when you can put 6 buses out there. But that's an aside. Different conversation. So here's just some happy pictures. Mickie went to gymnastics class, and we really haven't treated her any differently. She gets the same treatment all her brothers get, and I think it pays off. So she's in gym class. We don't have her dance class. She did a dance recital at Fiesta's this year. And here's the thing, I guess, in a piece of advocacy, I'd say is that we get to put our children in the community because that's how you destigmatize it, and that's how we teach. Right, and so we brought Mickie into her dance class and had to explain to the dance teachers, hey, here's what's going on. But by the end of the dance class, ready for the recital, Mickie was like one of their most prideful pieces of the performance, because they learned and they pitched in and they'd helped and they saw her grow and they saw her joy and passion and all that stuff in a way a lot of times only a special need kid can have that joy and passion, because they're free in some ways to really love and have fun and be happy. And so we love that Mickie. But she got glasses, and that helped her out. She loves to swing. At Irene Larson, it's kind of cool. They have reverse Main Street. And so her best friend was the typically developing young girl in the class. And they're great. We still love going back and seeing Dr. Z. And then Mickie just graduated from preschool this year. She's going to go into the county kindergarten class at Markham. And the cool thing is that she's going to enter it, 4 years and 10 months. So it's actually could be a TK year. So she could potentially repeat it next year and then maybe go into a mainstream first grade class or a mainstream kindergarten class. So we're open and excited about what it is for her and continue to give her opportunities to succeed. And she's nuts. She's absolutely bright, funny, crazy little girl. So for us, that's what victory looks like. It was a big fight, and Kristie will get into some of the advocacy piece. But for us, it's as a parent, you are the expert in your child, right? You know your child better than anybody ever is going to, and the doctors don't. The doctors get 15 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever exposure to them, and they're prescribing medicine based upon their general knowledge about whatever the disease or their thought is. And so if that doesn't resonate with you, you get to stand up for your kid. I know many of the folks in this audience do that on a daily basis. But remember to share that with the folks you come in contact with, because especially somebody coming out of the military, I meet an expert, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're the expert. What do you want me to do? Great. And so in that 9 months of fighting for Mickie, it was easier for me because I took the mission from the doctor and I went and executed the mission. I didn't have to come off that until 5 or 6 weeks later when that was done and come back, all right, how do you, boss? And the whole time, every 15 minutes, she's pulling her hair out and saying, hey, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right, but nobody would listen. We had to fail so many treatments before she's like, I know this isn't right, and to create a solution. So she's amazing. So for a little girl who's never going to walk or never going to talk, So that's victory. So, keep fighting for your little ones. We know you will, but they're awesome and they deserve it. And they chose you for a reason. Right? They chose you for a reason. So with that, I have my beautiful, amazing, powerful advocate of a bride, Kristie, who will kind of share her vision on advocacy and just where this all goes from here. So, Kristie.
Okay, with that, deep breath. Okay, thank you guys so much for having me. This has been a long time coming. I think we scheduled this 4 or 5 months ago, and that's due mostly to you, Nicole, and you really taking a need that you saw for yourself in your own journey and creating this beautiful place that we can all come together to learn and grow as advocates and parents, not even just special needs parents, but as parents, we need that support. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey. Gabe spoke about what it was like at the hospital, so I'll talk about what happened after, and I'll speak into a little bit about pediatric epilepsy specifically, and then talk about what's next and my advocacy. So I will never forget the day that we went down and saw Dr. Z, and it was the first time that a doctor had ever done this. And she looked me in the eyes and she said, "Your daughter will never be normal." And you're just never prepared for that. You have all these hopes and dreams, and so for me, I didn't know what was next, but I just knew that whatever I had thought or I had projected onto my little girl that even before she was born, because we didn't know what we were having when she came along, was shattered. And so there was a mourning process that took place, and I'm sure that you guys understand that. And so that mourning took place not only in the hospital. We were in quite a bit of survival mode. We got home after the brain surgery. It's the fastest they've ever gone to brain surgery at Chalk Children's Hospital, Orange County. And we made it home, and we were like, now what? And so I was very, very blessed to be connected to Heather Hanks, and she's at Irene Larson Center at the Me Too program, and just really held my hand and helped me navigate a lot of, the things that I needed with all the various organizations. And in that process, I was really, what I realize now, looking back, and I had a moment where I really saw, I had PTSD of my own kind. And I was taking that out in the form of uber perfectionism, because I'm a recovering perfectionist, and proud to say that. And so I did, without even realizing, was completely unaware. I wanted everything to be in its place. And one time I remember kind of yelling at my older son for things being a mess. And I just, that feeling where you're just like, I'm such a terrible mom. And I realized I am trying to make up that if I have everything perfect in its place, my daughter will not die. That is literally what I think was down in my subconscious. And so like I do in my life, I immediately recognized that. And I started reading about this and came across Brene Brown. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's a researcher, and she speaks a lot about vulnerability and shame, and talks about the only way you kind of really walk through moments in your life that are really hard is being vulnerable and being able to say, this is where I'm at. And I really didn't feel like I was enough. And I felt like I was dropping the ball with my son, and he's not getting enough attention because I'm focused on my daughter, and it was just real survival mode. And so I realized right then that I had to take care of me, that I was on empty, and so we doing a lot of research. This was before Bay Respite Services started. I found an amazing little babysitter who's now become a family friend, who came on, and it was just a yoga class. It was just a yoga class 2 times a week. They got it to go to, and it was just building on that and continuing to have that little piece of time for me that was very, very healing. And, you know, through that whole experience, I could continue to navigate the system. And what I learned was that you really get what you give. That developing relationships with all those therapists and the coordinators and the teachers and the principals, really understanding that they are being restrained too, that they're doing really the best that they can, even in bad situations that I've faced, you know, with Mickie. I mean, I've come into a situation with a Bay Respite, you know, provider, and you know, the provider was bathing my little girl, 20-month-old, in the bath and left her to go answer the door to let me in. You know, those type of things where you're like, how do you ever get over that? And for me, what I advocate is really be all in and be in relationship with the different members and the different peak coordinators, because they really are doing the best they can from my experience. And so I had a lot of good experiences. I mean, there's nothing more humbling than to be around a table with 20 people at an IEP. And I know that it's, for a lot of people, been a really traumatic experience. It's been one of the most humbling experiences. Every single IEP, I had this group of people that have developed a relationship with my daughter, that I've really developed a relationship with, and really worked hard to provide them whatever they needed, because a lot of times they don't have either information or resources that they need. And so, okay, well, you don't have it, then how can I help you? What do you need? You know, for me, it was going above and beyond before the IEP, that they had information. This is my binder, and I highly recommend. This is probably my third. This is my first, but I had 3 of them, and I took this to every single doctor's appointment. So this was the first one. So it's kind of funny because a lot of these don't apply anymore, which is cool. But you know, medical records, Epilepsy Support Network, PT, OT, Vision, Speech, Hearing, North Bay Regional Center, EFMP, Medi-Cal, and so
Recovery perfection.
exactly. Okay. But the thing is that you take this into a doctor and they go, do you have this? And I'm like, flip to it, here you go. They take you seriously. It makes a huge difference, you know, being really well informed and providing that. And it doesn't mean it's easy, but this was actually easier for me than anything else because I just had it there all the time. And yes, I was lugging this big binder around, but the point is that I really made a point to support those people that were supporting us and building relationships. Now, don't take into account that that little girl that you just saw is a charmer, and they all her therapists to this day are excited to work with her just because of her personality, which I'm so blessed that we can see, because so many families dealing with seizure disorders, the children are so drugged up or it morphs into worse things that they'll never really know who their child is. And so that is Mickie at the core, and I'm so grateful that we get to see that part of her, because I didn't think that was going to be possible. So with that journey coming home, I really started diving into, okay, what's next? And it just was a natural, because of these relationships that I built. It became so much easier for me to, when somebody says, I know somebody with a seizure disorder and they're suffering and they don't have a diagnosis, I finally just started making cards, and I like, don't be the middle person, just send them to me. I've had this experience, and so naturally, organically, through word of mouth, I started being the person to come to in this area if you had epilepsy. And so God kind of brought me the second calling, which really also helped in kind of coming out of that survival, is the giving back, because that's really the key to life. I mean, honestly, we could have everything. Our children could have no special need whatsoever, but if you're not giving back, if you're not passing along that joy in whatever moment or whatever it is that you're doing, it ends, it fades. But when you give it away, it doesn't ever end. It's just this gift that keeps giving, and it fills you up from a place that you didn't even know you had. And that's really what my advocacy became. And I always knew that I wanted to do something in philanthropy, because of my previous work. But then now I had my calling. And when I realized that these kids are seizing and they're not getting treatment, they're at Stanford with no medicine whatsoever, with the doctors at Stanford, brilliant, right? They're Stanford, but they're on a 30-minute EEG. That's not long enough to tell you that you don't know if your child's having a seizure in the middle of the night for 30 minutes during the day. That's just a snippet. And so no medicine. I mean, the stories that I had over and over and over were that wait and see attitude. We'll wait and see. Let's throw drugs at it. Well, if you fail 2 or more drugs, you have a 90% chance of failing all drugs with epilepsy. And your brain is like a muscle. And so when it seizes, it teaches itself to seize. And the more and more it does that, it just becomes, it becomes this snowball effect that's catastrophic to the developing brain. And the reason why we were so blessed is that I had that sense of urgency inside. That I knew, even with Gabe, he's like, very military about it. Like, this is the steps. And I'm like, we have to blow all these steps out of the way. This is wrong. They're not getting to the core. And so when we had that doctor for the first time say, your daughter will never be normal. She'll probably never walk or talk. And then the surgery became available. This surgery isn't to stop the seizures. It's to preserve the quality of your life. Like, your daughter will die. And it was the worst thing that I have ever heard in my life. It still gives me chill bumps today. But it was the best thing because that doctor prepared me for the advocate and the mom that I needed to be for Mickie, for her to survive and be who she is now. And that's the greatest thing, is to have doctors willing to be that honest and that adamant about not only what needs to happen, but where your child is, and then what are the steps. It's not, should we try this? It's like, this is what has to be done. And that's what this Dr. Mary Zuponce did for us. And so I'm eternally grateful. We call her Yoda. You'll see on one of the slides, we call her Yoda, and all the pediatric epileptologists that work for her Jedis. My 3 tenets, I'll go into a little bit about epilepsy, and then I'll continue along with the journey. But the things that I gained from, to helping families and talking to them, that were 3 tenets. The first one is trusting the parental instinct. I will never, ever forget the feeling inside my soul and gut that this was urgent. And I kept dealing with the head of neurology. I mean, brilliant man. But he didn't know the answers because he hadn't dealt with this before. And so what I needed was a pediatric epileptologist. It's an epileptologist, is a neurologist that has gone on and worked with world-renowned epileptologists for 2 years. They can read epileptic EEGs and MRIs, and then if you go on to pediatrics, you can read that of a child. And it's different, because the brain develops over time. And so knowing that there's only 20 in the United States, and there's 6 of them at my daughter's hospital, Chalk Children's Hospital, it's the only level 4 epilepsy center, pediatric epilepsy center in California. And so at first I worried because I was doing some fundraising and stuff, and I said, how am I going to get people to raise money for a hospital that's not here? Well, because you make it's the best one and the only one, and they'll help you get down there and help you navigate the process. That's why you have the right to get that higher level of care, and if you're not getting that care, you can get it, and it doesn't mean it's easy. And so I created my own little templates without even, I'm like, okay, so what would happen is it would start with the pediatrician or the neurologist. And so I created this letter template with languaging that would help these families navigate it, because it was very, very intimidating to go to these doctors. I remember the day we had to break up with our first neurologist. And he's like, well, we can do all those things here. Well, why haven't you? You haven't done it. So you don't get a second chance. This hospital does not only everything, it's comprehensive testing. So when my daughter went in, she was there like 72 hours minimum. It could be longer. It ended up being a week because she did genetic testing. She did all sorts of, EEGs, MRIs. And so these doctors have this ability to see as Gabe said, the physical manifestation of a seizure, and then which can be all sorts of things. It can be just an eye movement. This was, Mickie had these little eye movements, and then it ended up her head was hitting the ground, chipping her teeth. That's how fast it manifested in 9 months. And so getting to that pediatric epileptologist is absolutely critical if you have a child, especially if you have a child that has failed 2 or more drugs. If I had a child and I saw 1 seizure, I would be at Chalk Children's Hospital without a doubt, because it's comprehensive. And if something like that's happening, we really want to know what the underlying issue is. And what we found out is that Mickie has a microdeletion on chromosome 17, and 70% of kids with that microdeletion, it's called Coulon-de-Vries syndrome, it's a rare disease, have epilepsy. So the reason why she had the epilepsy wasn't even going to kill her. It was the epilepsy. It was the symptom, which was very relieving in many ways, because I don't know about you, but as a mom, what did I do? What did I do wrong? Did I have that one glass of wine when I was pregnant? What did I do to cause this? And so to know that it was nothing that I did, I wasn't a bad mom, that it was just, this is her and she's perfect. But it's not the way it looks, and I think that if we really did genetic testing on the whole population as a whole, we'd really realize that a lot of people have genetic, mutations, and it's okay, but we need to know what we have to be able to fight it. Otherwise, like Gabe said, you're just fighting a ghost. And so trusting the parental instincts, getting to that pediatric epileptologist, and the point is to get the diagnosis, to get that early diagnosis so that you can know what you're fighting and you can have that chance, because you guys know from everything that you've learned, 0 to 5, I mean, that's where the good stuff can happen. Also, the worst can happen. But if we can get in there early and remap that brain, and so Mickie's right brain started taking over for these missing left brain functions. Her eyes started turning out to the right to make up for the missing vision field cut. If we had that surgery, we would just be blind. So her eye goes out to remap. She had no use of the right side of her body. OT, PT starts coming. And she didn't say a word until about 3.5 and got her into school. And then it just, once the walking and all these other things happened, it just exploded. And I remember having those feelings of guilt when my daughter started talking, because I have one of my best friends, an advocate, it's a rare disease advocate, and her daughter has Phelan-McDermott syndrome, which is a very severe form of autism and a rare disease, and her daughter will never speak. And I would feel guilty about that. But her daughter's extremely healthy and doing all these other things. So there's this experience I had of, like, especially the more I was around, and I don't know if you experience this around families with special needs, this comparative suffering, where it's like twofold. One, you say something, well, that's nothing. I mean, that's like a third, that's nothing compared to my child. They almost did da-da-da-da. Or what I was experiencing, like, I don't want to tell that because my daughter's okay. No, there's plenty of love to go around, plenty of compassion to go around. There's lots of suffering. And so we get to all be there and hold each other's hands and say, yes, this isn't what we planned. This isn't what we thought would be, but I wouldn't change anything, because I know that this is my calling. I know that this is why I'm here on this planet, to be here in front of you. And I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody, maybe one day you're going to run into somebody with, I think my child had a seizure or something, and you're going to call Kristie. And that's my point of being here, is global pediatric epilepsy awareness is my vision and my advocacy, and the stand I'm taking here on this planet, and my goal before I pass away. Because you know what, if this is what's happening in Solano County or my own town, 30 families, maybe more, that I've helped, and some that won't take my help, and I have to be okay with that as an advocate too. But imagine what this is worldwide, and so much of it, if you look at it at a political level, as Gabe and I just experienced, it comes down to dollar bills. Well, you know what? Let's talk about that. If you're not going to look at just the human capital and suffering that takes place, that 85% of families who have a child with intractable epilepsy divorce. That's catastrophic to the children, to the families. And then if you add on the financial toll that it takes, that these kids like Mickie, she could have been in a vegetative state for the rest of her life, or not even lived. What kind of cost would that be to our state and to our county? So if there are ways to advocate that will help, allow people, and I have a lot of ideas about that for moving forward. But really, those 3 tenets, getting to a pediatric epileptologist, trusting the parental instinct to get an early diagnosis, are really things that I share with parents, especially with epilepsy. And not, as a side note, if you do happen to run anybody that has this, a child with epilepsy, they'll see children up to 22 at Chalk Children's Hospital, and I will hold your hand and I will get your child there, no matter what it takes. That's what I do. And so, you know, I came out of this and I started helping other families, and I thought, this is what I'm supposed to do. And in the meantime, Gabe and I had to make some big decisions. Like, we wanted another child, but do we do that? You know, like, you know, is this crazy? You know, everybody, you know, and I don't know if you've experienced, did you have the people that are like, you're going to have another child? Are you really? Yeah, but you don't understand. I have to think about, not only do I want another child, but I have to think about what happens if we're not here.
Right.
You know, it's all going to be on my Preston. I'm not saying that's why I have my beautiful Harrison, my 20-month-old, but those are the type of things that you have to think about, and really think forward, even though you don't want to. Special needs trust and all this stuff that you weren't planning, but it's so beautiful because all of these things, we're all doing it together, right? And there's more families that you're going to be able to touch when you have dealt with something as difficult as for us on brain surgery and saving Mickie, or special needs, you know. So in the advocacy world, I really started helping a lot of families, and I never wanted to have my own profit because I was working in LA. My previous life, prior to Gabe, was an event planner for MGM Studios, and I worked and did event planning for Wells Fargo Bank, and I worked with all the nonprofits in Los Angeles. And I knew that I wanted to do something in the philanthropic world, but I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to be. And I knew there's so many great nonprofits. Why do people keep starting more? You know, just utilize the resources you already have. But it became very clear to me, especially in this area, even though I have a global mission, that pediatric epilepsy awareness. How am I going to raise money for something that people don't even acknowledge? Epilepsy is there. There's so much stigma behind epilepsy. There's so many people, the stars in the entertainment world, there's so many people with epilepsy, they don't talk about it. There's a lot of people have it, but up until the books in the 1950s, Dr. Dupont says people who had epilepsy weren't allowed to marry because they were considered possessed by the devil. And so the stigma runs deep. More people died of epileptic seizure accidents than breast cancer. You have NFL players running around in pink. Is there anything for epilepsy? No. And so that's when I had this epiphany, like, I get to keep advocating for families and holding their hand to get care for their children, but we have to start with awareness. That's the seed. And so that's my goal. And I realized pediatric epilepsy awareness, Mickie's Miracles. And so I'm in the process of starting Mickie's Miracles, which is a nonprofit. And yet through all this, I realized I don't want to be running a nonprofit. I want to be doing this. I want to be connecting. I want to be learning. I want to be going to conferences and absorbing information. And so during the campaign, and I think, Nicole, you've met her, during the campaign, this little blessing came along. I was just about to lose my mind. It was only like 3 or 4 months into it. And I couldn't manage everything. And I had done some leadership training in Las Vegas, and I had called a friend I was fundraising. So I was calling, raising money for Gabe and the campaign. And I was talking to this friend that I went through, and I go, what about your daughter? Because I knew her daughter wanted to do something in the nonprofit world. She's like, well, she's doing fundraising right now and social media, and she wants to start a nonprofit. I'm like, get her on the phone. So she came out, her name's Katie, and I've asked her to be the executive director of Mickie's Miracles. And so she will run it. I will be the founder and the visionary to allow me to do what I do best and what I love to do. And I think that was really important because you have so many preconceived notions, or I did, about what would be expected of me and what I had to do. This is a recovering perfectionist. And so realizing that I get to write my path and I get to be the author, and I'm not in survival anymore, we're thriving. And that doesn't mean that we don't have stumbles, not only with, Mickie, but our other 2, Preston and Harrison, but that I get to dictate what that looks like. And that really came to the forefront after the campaign. Gabe and I were just done. I mean, as we said earlier, our naturopath said, I can't believe you're not in the hospital. You guys have nothing left. My adrenal glands, I have issues with my thyroid. It all came raging back. I looked at myself, I said, I did it again. I put myself all in. I had a vision bigger than ourselves with the campaign, and I didn't take care of myself the whole time. And that's not okay for me, because I want to be the best and I want to advocate and be stronger for everybody. But if I'm not around and I'm unhealthy, how's that going to be? And so that really opened up a whole new world for me. I had started a blog back in February when I turned 39. Oh, old. And I said, you know, my goal is with this blog is to be the best pediatric epilepsy advocate that I can be. And so over the next year, follow me on my journey of this blog. And it was smack dab in the middle of the campaign, but I'm like, I got to do what I got to do. And so honestly, I was always like balancing this. I didn't want my advocacy and Mickie's miracles and everything that I was doing to be tainted by politics. And so I really made a concerted effort, even on our. I never posted anything about the campaign on the websites. People started engaging in conversation. I'd call them. I'm like, happy to have a conversation. Let's have coffee. No, I'm not available. I can't do that. I can't help that. You know, I just knew that I wanted to kind of keep it separate. And after the campaign, you know, Gabe and I were just spent, and we took some time, and we're kind of on a journey within right now. We're doing 6 months of daily meditation, yoga, reading, and it's been wonderful. And so in that, this thing came to light where it's like, these are all hats that I'm wearing, you know, a mom hat and a wife hat, and have a girls night out hat, and, you know, advocate and public speaker, and I do it really well. But yes.
And Kristie.
And a Kristie hat. I'm learning that one.
Mm-hmm.
Put in that background. And so they're pieces of me. I can't separate them. And so kind of had this come to Jesus moment, and was just extremely vulnerable with my blog, and said, this is the way it really is. I can't separate the two. Like, I have hard days. I'm in resistance. You know, I need more sleep, and my daughter's like, go for a walk. And so that's the feedback, though, that I've gotten now on my blog is from my just mommy friends that have totally typically developing, going, oh my gosh, I love your blog. You know, when you tell me about that moment when Mickie's tugging on you and you're like, please go back to sleep, like go, you know, I wanted to tell her, go watch a show or something, which that's a huge milestone that she can actually watch a show for more than 5 minutes. It's like, but I didn't. I got up, and I didn't resist that moment. I just, this is what it is, and accepted it for what it is. It creates this space of you being present and connected to your child in a way that I hadn't probably been before, especially during the campaign, because we were just all in. And so learning that being vulnerable, the thing that I was resisting the most because I wanted it to look a certain way or not look a certain way, was not okay. Like, the best thing was to be vulnerable and real, because that's really what we want. We want to be able to connect with somebody else and say, yes, I get that. You know, I do have those experiences as a mom too, not just a special needs mom, but just a mom or a parent, you know? And my blog is my creative outlet. I think that creativity for me is something that I have stifled, especially since marriage and children. Writing for me, everybody has something else. I have friends that are like the craftiest people ever. I'm not like that. But writing for me is my creative outlet. And I think creativity is this allows you to merge all these different parts of yourself through your hands or whatever it is, your voice, and integrate really different parts of you and your different experiences in a way that allows you to connect with others. And that's what I think we're all really seeking here, is that connection. And so for me, what's next is to continue with the blog, with the writing. And I realized that maybe it's not just pediatric global awareness. Maybe it's being the best advocate and it being that example for other people and teaching them how to take care of themselves by me doing it for myself, which is really hard to do. I mean, I was meditating driving over here. It didn't look pretty, which as a recovering perfectionist, I don't like. You know, Gabe's like, why are your eyes closed? I'm trying to meditate. You know, I'm grounding myself right now. And he's like, okay. But it's so normal, part of our vernacular now. And you know, I didn't get my yoga in, so I'm going to try to do it tonight before I go to sleep. Or, you know, these little daily things, all these things to like just a moment for me. And now I'm craving the meditation. But I really wanted to have this like lifelong practice for me that allows me to carry me on to all the things that I want to do. And as you see, Gabe and I don't do things small. We kind of go big. And so we have big vision, and not only for our children, but for us and for the future and for advocacy. And so for me, that part is really about taking care of myself. It's about taking that time to put me first, which sometimes can be a little challenging, but important. Also just, the eating healthy and all that stuff. And I don't do it perfect all the time. And so for me right now, it's just saying, that's a siren. It's me saying, I'm enough. I didn't get to X, Y, Z. I didn't check all these boxes, but I'm still enough. And I did the best that I could. And you know what? Tomorrow's a new day, and I'm going to start over. And that's really hard at times because I have this vision about the way things should be, and it doesn't turn out that way. And that's okay. But knowing that the more, it's like chilies that has the onion, the blossom onion. I don't know what it's called, but it's like the blooming onion or something. It's like that. It's like eating that one piece at a time and stripping away these parts of you that could be really cathartic and healing, which is what my blog is and what's being here is taking the worst thing that ever happened to me and making it be the best thing. And that is something that I'm infinitely grateful to God and to Mickie for, that I can share this and to be to help just even one person is everything that I could wish for to move forward. And I think that really creating that network of people that you can fall into that have earned the right to hear your story. Brene Brown, in this new book that she has, she says, I don't have anything against complaining as long as you bitch and moan with perspective. And so that's what I advocate is there's some people that you'll surround yourself around and they take you kind of down a dark hole. Mm-hmm. And, I don't have that much energy. I have these little, now I can see that I have this much, right? And so I have this little pizza pie for me, my husband, my 3 kids, advocacy, my home, all these different things. And so now I'm really thinking about, especially after the campaign, I know who took a stand for me and Gabe, and I'm so blessed for that because we are all in. And so now when I see other people all in, Nicole, Krista, I see you guys, I'm going to take a stand for those people that do that in life. And I think that's really important to surround yourself along this journey with people who are going to care for you and support you and help you move forward. So that's our story. If you guys have any questions, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm honored to be here. I've really been excited to do this. I wanted to do this a long time ago, but this presentation evening is very successful. And so I just want you to know that I take this advocacy hat and mom hat off to all of you for just being here, supporting one another, and being the best that you can for your children. It's really, really pretty amazing journey that we're in together. So thank you. I appreciate it.
First off, I want to say thank you to both of you for coming and sharing your story and your journey and all of your advocating and your perspectives. So thanks for coming out. I have a couple questions.
Yeah. Come on.
Okay. So I guess the first one would be, when you were pregnant with Mickie, did you have any clue or any kind of
no
awareness or warnings?
No, there was no warnings. She was born perfectly healthy. She had that, what's that test?
AFGAR.
Yeah, she had the best, and I'm like, okay, that's crazy. First of all, she came out, she was a girl. I was so excited I got my girl because we didn't know we were having. But no, she was perfectly healthy. The first indicator, and she was very affable, very happy. She's very girly. But at the week before her first seizure, and this is why infantile spasms is very much connected to colic, is she got very irritable. I mean, to the point where I was about to take her into the, I thought, well, maybe she's I'm like, she can't be teething, she's, 3 months old. Maybe I thought it was. And, but inconsolable. And so I remember those past, it's all a blur, but the few days before her first seizure, I remember carrying her around in the carrier, at a loss, I am not, it's me, I'm doing something wrong. And then she had the seizure. And then what happens is that these kids get misdiagnosed because it's not that. And they're just the body, their chemistry changes and they get really, really irritable because it's like you're meditating in the middle of the forest and a gun's being shot off in your head. That's the static, how disruptive it is to the child. So.
And then, what kind of genetic testing did you have done? Was it the West test or
It was a microarray.
whole
yeah.
exome sequencing?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was very specific. So the genetic test, they did the geneticist came in, and they assessed her, and so they really did. They looked at the facial feature and they really narrowed down what it could be.
Was it hard to get the doctors to give you that testing?
No, because it's part of the process at Children's Hospital, which is why I advocate for being at a hospital like that. And I think I absolutely advocate for it. I don't know what the cost is on the other side. We're very blessed that we had TRICARE, but imagine all these families if they knew what is the deep down diagnosis of their child. Not only the comfort that they have in a weird way, not at first, it's pretty devastating to hear that your daughter has global developmental delays. That stuff will never go away. I can't, PT, OT, speech that out of a Mickie, that microdeletion. But now that I have that, it really gave some peace to us. And I think will give peace to so many families that are wondering there's something wrong, but they're not getting answers. Well, why don't we just give them the test and be done with it? And know, so we can move forward. And then you can get pooled in. I'm with a Cool and Devise support group online. So you can advocate with, very specifically with your child, with all other kids and really help you as a parent and advocate be prepared for your child.
There's a lot of information too in that subculture, already Cool and Devise. And so we've learned and helped and grown in our understanding of what Mickie's needs are, right? So that diagnosis helps us find the right support network, where this is a rather generalized group of parents who have children that they're fighting for, which is awesome. But there's some misses in relatability when you're telling stories about your kids, I'm sure. And so it's nice to have both levels of support. And they went on to have us both tested, and then after we had our second son, we were able to have them both tested. We chose not to have Preston tested originally because we're like, well, that's just one data. I can't do anything with one data point. But once we had a second son, we were able to then have more information.
So were you tested when you were pregnant with Harrison to see if he was going to have the same deletion?
We chose not to. We did some, but I chose not to.
We just did the traditional.
We did traditional.
Testing.
I wasn't going to do anything either way, and for me personally, it's our choice, but so I chose not to. And although I have to tell you, when he came out, infants do really weird things. So I was a mess. I was an absolute mess, and I just got to the point. I'm sending Dr. Z videos, and she's like, yeah, that's normal. I'm like, it got to the point, and we're like, just do the testing already.
So we took Harrison in for EEG because we were convinced that he had the same thing that he had.
Right.
Because he'd twitch or he'd look away or, and he was fine.
But know that we have, because of Mickie, we have set a pathway, really, she has, from TRICARE at David Grant Medical Center. They refer all the kids with epilepsy from a lot of the families that I've helped.
Well, now we have Kaiser. That's coming on board.
Yeah, that's coming. Yeah. We've had a couple Kaiser going down there. They're referring them to Chuck Children's because they had such great success with Mickie. So sometimes you may not have that pathway, but you get to be the one that's going to be on the frontier doing it, and that's okay too. It's not pretty, it's ugly, and sometimes you're going to be stumbling, but honestly the doctors are grateful. I mean, Dr. Tan is, yes, you are, to have the pediatrician say, like, you have carte blanche, your child, this is past my expert stage, I don't know pediatric epilepsy, and to say, okay, this is what I need, this is how I need it to happen, this is the doctor, has been wonderful to have that support. So having that pediatrician, one that really you can trust, is so essential.
Well, it's just a team.
Yeah, definitely. I know on a personal level that Kaiser charges about $7,000 to do that whole exome sequencing. So thank God I was covered for that.
Good.
Had to push for it.
Okay.
So it's something that you have to advocate for. So I highly recommend that if you're trying to find that needle in the haystack, if you can push for that whole exam sequencing.
Could not agree more.
Of course, they don't want to pay for it, so you have to really push.
Yeah.
But on a fun side, I wanted to ask you about your experience meeting Jennifer Garner when you were at your last visit.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, we went. So this is the other thing is you know what it's like to be in the flow of things, like when everything's just even when like things are not pretty. We were at the hospital, but you're just in the zone, and I think that goes back to the non-resistance, like kind of just trusting every day and accepting where you're at. And so we went down for Mickie's long-term monitoring 3 weeks ago. Yeah, something like that. And we go, we check in. We've done this routine quite a few times. We were like, see, it's like seeing family again. Now we've connected with all the doctors and the nurses. They know us. And so we went in, and literally Mickie's, I got my green drinks. I'm like, I'm going to do this differently. I went to our health food store, I had green drinks. Gabe's going to go check in. I come with the green drinks. And I look around, and this child life advocate's like, how, can I introduce you to Jennifer Garner? I'm like, okay. You know, here you go. And sitting down. And so Mickie's getting her IV, which has never been a fun experience because she has very, very small veins. And when she was like really blown up here, it was a nightmare. And so then I learned on Sue, the charge nurse is the only one that will give my daughter an IV because she got it every time. And so blessings, we got there on Sue. I look at the nurse, Ronnie, who I love, but I'm like on Sue's during the IV. She's like, perfect. You know, they want you to be strong. They want you to say what you want. Like, and so she's getting the IV, and then Jennifer Garner walks in, and I start having this conversation. And of course, I jump on my soapbox immediately and go into global pediatric epilepsy awareness. And yeah, do you work with Harrison Ford? Because I want him to be. Harrison Ford's daughter has epilepsy, and he just donated, I believe, his.
It's either the Han Solo or the Indiana Jones jacket
For
to
awareness.
an auction.
And so I'm gonna get connected to him, and he will be at Mickey's Miracle Gala.
Invite us.
And so I literally said, I'm like telling her, she's like, oh, does he have it? I said, no, his daughter. And we just had this great talk as moms. And in the middle of it, Mickie bursts into not that song, but God Bless America as she's getting her IV and sings the whole thing and is looking adorably at her dad. And Jennifer Garner's like, looks at Gabe and she's like, stop it right now. And she like slaps him. You know, and it was great. And she, I guess, did a movie. We should do a girls' night. Have you guys seen the movie Miracles from Heaven?
Not yet.
So we should do that as a night out. So she did that, and she does a lot of advocacy for Save the Children in her home state of West Virginia. And they just got hit by a whole bunch of floods. And so she raises awareness for kids in that home state and just in general. I think when this is weird. So after she left and I go home and I'm getting ready for my blog, I'm like, I'm going to, just Google her, Jennifer Garner. So I Google her and I look up, and the story about Miracles from Heaven, and my nonprofit is to be Mickie's Miracles, is about a mom named Kristie whose middle daughter, I think it's Matilda or Magda something, had a very serious disease or something and had literally a medical miracle to be saved. And so I'm like, okay, this was eerie. It was a little eerie. And we just had a great, short conversation about, then Mickie stole the show as per usual. I'm like, okay. And then when she left, Gabe handed me my calling card, and I said, for Harrison. She's like, well, he is my Harrison Ford. I said, for Harrison. This is like, I kind of do that all the time. Harrison, when you meet him, and she's like, well, he's my neighbor. I'm like, good, let him know, have him call me. So I am hoping that, my son's named Harrison. Like, I don't know, we put the things out there, and it tends to work out. So that was great. And there's a lot of people, I think Hollywood gets a really bad rap about being so ego focused, because she and I did also have a conversation about how it's one of the most philanthropic towns. They raise a lot of money for a lot of different things, but it was just that day. She was just another mom, plain faced, gorgeous, but another mom there, just knowing that she could be there and I think help other families enlighten it. But it was really cool. Gabe thought that she was
nice.
Very nice.
Really nice.
So
Real.
yeah, real. I wrote this in my blog. If you Google Mrs. Griess at blogspot, I think .com, You can see my blog, and it's like I did a 2-part series of the LTM to kind of share with families what a long-term monitoring is like, and that was day 1. And then, and so all I had to do was put up, the picture of me, like, and then my hair's all messed up, and I'm like, but it's real, and on my soapbox, and that got people to read it. So that was kind of cool. I'm like, who are we gonna meet next to get my views up? But yeah, it was awesome. Do you guys have any more questions?
You guys gonna have more kids?
No, we're done. We are so done. Right? The campaign was our last
I don't
child.
know that I have that much sleep deprivation left in my body.
Yeah. No, we're very content, like very, Harrison, our 20-month-old, is literally a human wrecking ball. He looks like a minion. And he like walks around, and he literally, we have this new house. It's a very old house, and he is like climbing. It's over 100 years old, and he's climbing like the china cabinet.
Right.
And it's my other kids. None of them are like that. And he's so different, and keeps us on our toes, but then just like brings a lot of joy back to us that I think we kind of needed, and a lot of he lets us be present. Let's put it this way. But no,
Where things break. You're the
very.
present. You're the present.
Well, yeah, you don't care. I mean, now I understand how like the 3rd child, those parents are like, whatever. I mean, when we were engaged, we went back to Nebraska, and he has the one cousin has like 6 boys, and one of them, I'm like, where's Junior? And Junior's like in the fire pit, like scrounging around, like
It's the
dead.
next morning.
And
He's
he's
literally crawling to where the bonfire was the night before, and I'm like,
What's going on?
comes
Like,
out covered in
so
ash, and
it
you're
was
like,
fine, It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
it's country.
Yeah, it was a little country. But no, he keeps us on our toes. We're quite content with 3. No way.
Any more questions?
Awesome.
Anyone else?
Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys. We
Yeah.
really
Thank you very much.